The galaxy was old, older than any human could truly understand, and the beings who ruled it had watched stars born and die for 100,000 years before Earth even existed. The Galactic Concord was a council of 12 ancient species who had long ago decided they knew best how the universe should work. They made laws that could not be broken, kept secrets that could not be shared, and above all else, they kept certain places hidden from everyone, especially from the young and curious species who had just begun to reach for the stars. Humanity had only recently earned their place among the stars. They were newcomers, children really, in the eyes of the elder races. Their ships were crude, their technology was simple, and their lifespans were laughably short. But there was something about humans that made the ancient ones nervous, something they could not quite name or explain. Ambassador Elias Vance stood in the great hall of the Concord, surrounded by beings of crystal and light, creatures of living metal, and entities that existed in more dimensions than human eyes could see. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes, and he had spent his entire career learning to read the body language of aliens. What he saw now was fear, pure and ancient fear. "I have a simple question," Elias said, his voice calm and steady. "Every star map we have been given has a gap. Every database has a section that is locked. There is a place at the edge of the galaxy that does not appear on any record. What is Kethvoron, and why are we forbidden to know about it?" The hall fell silent. The crystalline Vethkai delegate, an ancient being named Sorvith who had lived for 9,000 years, turned its faceted head toward the human. Light bent strangely around its form as it spoke in a voice like breaking glass. "Some doors must stay closed," Sorvith said. "This is not a matter for young species. This is not a matter for anyone. Forget the name you have spoken and never speak it again." But Elias Vance was human, and humans had never been good at forgetting things they were told to forget. If anything, being told not to look at something only made humans want to look at it more. 3 months later and halfway across the galaxy, Dr. Yuki Tanaka sat in her small research lab aboard the exploration vessel Prometheus. She was a xenoarchaeologist, a scientist who studied the ruins and remains of alien civilizations, and she had spent the last 10 years of her life trying to understand the secrets of the universe. The Prometheus was a modest ship with a crew of 47 humans. They were supposed to be surveying dead planets and ancient ruins, following a careful route approved by the Concord. But Yuki had found something that changed everything. "Captain Cole," she said into her communicator, "you need to come see this right now." Captain Marcus Cole arrived in her lab 5 minutes later. He was a broad-shouldered man with dark skin and a thick beard, and he had commanded the Prometheus for 6 years. He trusted Yuki completely, which was why he came running when she called. "What have you found?" he asked. Yuki pointed to her screen where strange signals flickered and danced. "I intercepted this 3 hours ago. It is coming from coordinates that do not exist on any map we have been given. The signal is old, Captain, incredibly old, but it is not random. Something is broadcasting from a place the Concord does not want us to know about." Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment. He knew the rules. He knew what the Concord had told them about forbidden zones. He also knew that curiosity was the most human trait of all, and that no human had ever truly been able to resist a mystery. "How far?" he asked. 6 days at maximum speed," Yuki replied. "We would have to leave our approved route. The Concord would eventually find out. We could lose everything, our ship, our careers, maybe even our freedom." Marcus Cole smiled, and it was the smile of a man who had already made up his mind. "Set a course. We will deal with the consequences later." The journey to Kethvoron took exactly 6 days, and every day brought new strangeness. The closer they got, the more the instruments began to behave in ways that made no sense. Clocks ran backward for brief moments. The ship's computer reported impossible readings. Crew members had dreams they could not remember but woke from screaming. When they finally arrived, the entire crew gathered at the observation deck to see what they had found. What they saw took their breath away. Kethvoron was a moon, dead and cold, but it was wrapped in something that should not have existed. A shell of pure neutronium, the densest material in the universe, surrounded the entire surface. Quantum locks that even the ship's computer could not fully understand sealed every possible entrance. Whoever had built this prison had used technology so advanced that it made humanity's greatest achievements look like children playing with blocks. "This is not a moon," Yuki whispered. "This is a cage." She was right, and the readings proved it. Something was inside, something alive, something that had been locked away for longer than human civilization had existed. The energy signatures were impossible to read, but one thing was clear. Whatever was inside Kethvoron was aware of them. "We should leave," said Lieutenant Chen, the ship's security officer. "We should turn around right now and never speak of this place again." But it was already too late. As they watched, a section of the neutronium shell began to shift. Ancient mechanisms that had not moved in 60,000 years grown to life. A door was opening, and it was opening for them. "The Conquered hid this for a reason," Marcus said quietly. "They were afraid of whatever is inside. The question is, should we be afraid too, or should we find out what they did not want us to know?" He looked around at his crew, at the faces of humans who had traveled across the galaxy to find answers. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw something stronger: curiosity, wonder, and the stubborn human refusal to turn back from the unknown. "We go in," he decided. "We came here to learn the truth, and that is exactly what we are going to do." The Prometheus moved forward into the darkness, and somewhere deep inside the ancient prison, something that had slept for 60,000 years began to wake. The inside of Kethvoron was nothing like the crew of the Prometheus had expected. There were no walls of metal or stone, no corridors or chambers. Instead, they found themselves floating through a space that seemed to exist between reality and dream. The ship moved slowly through a darkness that was not truly dark. Strange lights flickered at the edges of vision, colors that had no names, shapes that hurt to look at directly. The crew spoke in whispers, as if afraid that loud voices might wake something terrible. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood at the main sensor station, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. "The readings make no sense," she said. "According to our instruments, we are everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The laws of physics do not seem to work the same way in here." Captain Cole stood beside her, his hands gripping the console so hard his knuckles turned white. "Keep recording everything. Whatever happens, the universe needs to know what we found here." That was when the voice came, except it was not really a voice at all. It was silence. It was the cold, empty space between thoughts. It was the feeling of falling asleep and forgetting who you are. Every person on the ship felt it at the same moment, a presence that spoke without words, that communicated through absence rather than sound. 3 crew members, young scientists who had joined the mission just 6 months ago, stood up from their stations with blank expressions on their faces. Without saying a word, they walked toward the airlock. "Stop them," Cole shouted. But it was too late. The 3 crew members opened the airlock and stepped out into the impossible space beyond. They did not die, at least not in any way that made sense. Instead, they simply faded away, becoming part of the darkness, joining whatever presence had called to them. The rest of the crew stood frozen in horror. Lieutenant Chen drew his weapon, though he had no idea what he would shoot at. The ship's doctor, a woman named Sarah Wells, began to cry silently. "What is this place?" Cole demanded. "What is inside this prison?" Yuki had been working frantically at her console, trying to decrypt the ancient files they had downloaded from the outer shell. Now she looked up, and her face was pale as death. "I found it," she said. "I found the records. Captain, we need to leave right now. We have made a terrible mistake." She put the files on the main screen for everyone to see, and what they learned chilled them to the bone. 60,000 years ago, the galaxy had almost ended. A creature had emerged from somewhere beyond normal space, from the gaps between dimensions where nothing should exist. The elder races called it the Hollow King, though it had no true name that any living mind could speak. The Hollow King was not evil in the way humans understood evil. It did not hate or want to cause pain. It simply was what it was, a force of entropy, of unmaking, of the cold silence that waits at the end of all things. It fed on order, on stability, on the very forces that held reality together. Where the Hollow King passed, stars aged and died in moments. Entire civilizations crumbled into dust. The fundamental laws of physics broke down and stopped working. It was not a monster. It was an ending, a preview of the death of the universe itself. The 12 elder races had fought the Hollow King with everything they had. They had sacrificed entire star systems, thrown billions of lives into the fire, used weapons that could crack planets in half. None of it worked. The Hollow King could not be killed because it was not truly alive. It could not be destroyed because it was destruction itself. In desperation, the elder races had tried something else. They built a trap, a cage of neutronium and quantum locks, a prison that existed partly outside of normal space. They lured the Hollow King inside and sealed the door behind it. The cost had been beyond counting. Whole species had died to build the cage. Worlds had been burned to power the locks. And even then, the prison was never meant to last forever. It was only meant to buy time, to delay the inevitable end. The cage has been weakening for centuries, Yuki said. The Hollow King would have escaped eventually, with or without us. But we woke it up. We reminded it that the universe still exists. As if to prove her words, the darkness around the ship began to move. Something vast and terrible was rising from the depths of the prison. Something that had spent 60,000 years dreaming of dissolution and silence. Yuki felt it touch her mind again, and this time she did not pull away. She let the presence flow through her thoughts, and she discovered something that surprised her. The Hollow King was curious. For 60,000 years, it had been alone in the dark, dreaming the same dreams, existing in an endless moment of nothing. The minds of the elder races were familiar to it, ordered, logical, predictable. They thought in straight lines and followed patterns that the Hollow King could read like a simple book. But human minds were different. Human minds were chaos and fire, contradictions and creativity, fear and hope all mixed together in ways that made no sense. Human minds burned bright and fast, lived and died in the blink of a cosmic eye, and yet they contained more noise and strange beauty than the ancient minds the Hollow King had known before. The presence did not try to consume Yuki. Instead, it studied her, examined her thoughts the way a scientist might examine an interesting new specimen. "It does not want to destroy us," Yuki whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It wants to understand us. In 60,000 years, it has never met anything like us." But even as she spoke, the prison walls continued to crack. The quantum locks that had held for millennia were failing, and somewhere in the distance, alarms began to sound, not from the Prometheus but from across the galaxy. The conquered had detected the breach. The elder races knew that their ancient secret was about to escape, and they knew exactly who to blame. "We need to run," Cole said. "The conquered will send warships. They will try to stop what we have started." The Prometheus turned and fled, racing through the crumbling prison toward the stars outside. Behind them, something ancient and terrible stretched and yawned, waking from the longest sleep in the history of the universe. The Hollow King was rising, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species with a communicator heard the terrible message. The prison of Kethvoron had been breached. The Hollow King was waking, and humans were to blame. On the homeworld of the Vethkai, Ancient crystals that had stood for 1 million years began to crack and groan. On the metal planets of the Corvith Collective, machines that had never known fear started to malfunction. Across 1,000 worlds and 1 million space stations, the elder races looked up at the stars and felt the cold hand of terror grip their hearts. The Conquered assembled in emergency session for the first time in 4,000 years. Every delegate came in person, no holographic projections allowed. This matter was too important, too terrifying to discuss through anything less than direct contact. Sorvith, the ancient Vethkai who had warned Elias Vance to forget about Kethvoron, spoke first. Its crystalline body flickered with angry light as it addressed the gathered delegates. "We warned them," Sorvith said. "We told them to stay away. We told them some doors must remain closed. But humans do not listen. Humans cannot obey. Humans are a plague upon the galaxy, and now their curiosity has doomed us all." The other delegates shouted their agreement. The Corvith machines hummed with fury. The Drelvani shapeshifters rippled with rage. The Mechster warriors beat their metal chests and demanded blood. "The solution is clear," said High Admiral Vexter of the Stellar Navy. "We must eliminate the human threat. If we destroy their homeworld and all their colonies, perhaps we can appease the Hollow King. Perhaps we can convince it to return to its slumber." Not a single delegate objected. The vote was unanimous. Within 1 hour of the session beginning, the entire military might of the Galactic Conquered had been ordered to converge on human space. 3,000 warships launched from 100 different worlds. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons powered up their weapons. Fighter squadrons numbering in the millions swarmed toward Earth like angry insects. The greatest fleet ever assembled in the history of the galaxy was coming to destroy a species that had only reached the stars 200 years ago. On Earth, panic filled the streets. People looked up at the sky and wondered how much longer they had to live. Governments collapsed under the weight of fear. Armies mobilized, though everyone knew human weapons could never hope to match the firepower of the Conquered. Ambassador Elias Vance stood in the United Nations building, speaking to every leader on the planet. "We have 72 hours before the fleet arrives. We cannot fight them. We cannot run. Our only hope is to find another way." Meanwhile, the Prometheus raced through hyperspace, pushing its engines beyond any safe limit. The ship was falling apart, held together by desperate repairs and stubborn human will. Captain Cole and his crew knew they were the most wanted beings in the galaxy, but they also knew they carried something important, data that could change everything. "I have finished analyzing the prison records," Dr. Tanaka announced. "The Conquered has been lying. They have been lying to everyone, including themselves." She explained what she had found. The Hollow King's prison had not been stable for thousands of years. It had been slowly failing, the quantum locks degrading, the neutronium shell weakening. The elder races had known this, but they had been too afraid to face the truth. They had buried the reports, hidden the evidence, and pretended that everything was fine. "The Hollow King would have escaped within the next century even if we had never come," Yuki said. "Our arrival did not cause this crisis. We only revealed what was already happening." But there was more. During her contact with the Hollow King's mind, Yuki had sensed something that the elder races had never understood. The beast was not mindless or thoughtless. It was simply different, existing outside the normal boundaries of time and consciousness. The elder races had tried to fight it with weapons, had tried to cage it with technology. They had never once tried to talk to it, to understand it, to ask it what it wanted. "Human minds are strange to it," Yuki said. "We are chaotic and unpredictable. We burn bright and die fast. To the Hollow King, we are the most interesting thing it has encountered in 60,000 years. It did not try to consume me. It tried to communicate." Captain Cole listened carefully, then made a decision that would either save humanity or doom it. "We need to reach Ambassador Vance. He is the only one who might be able to use this information. He is the only one who might be able to stop the war." The Prometheus changed course, heading straight for Earth despite the death sentence that waited for everyone aboard. They had to pass through the conquered fleet to reach their home, which meant they had to be clever, fast, and very lucky. Back on Earth, Elias Vance received the Prometheus transmission with stunned disbelief. Could it be true? Could the solution to this nightmare be so simple and so strange? He thought about everything he knew about humanity, about the traits that made his species unique among the stars. Humans were stubborn, curious, reckless, and brave. They made friends with their enemies, tamed wild beasts, and found hope in the darkest places. They were the species that had domesticated wolves into dogs, that had turned deadly rivers into sources of power, that had looked at every challenge and said, "We can work with this." The conquered had spent 60,000 years building cages and living in fear. Humans had spent their entire history finding ways to turn threats into allies. "If we are going to die anyway," Elias said to his advisors, "then let us die trying something that no one else has ever tried. Let us die trying to make friends with a god." He began to prepare a message, not to the conquered, not to the human fleet that was forming to make a last desperate stand, but to Kethvoron itself. He was going to talk to the Hollow King. Everyone told him he was insane. Everyone told him it was impossible. But Elias Vance smiled and said the most human words of all, "Watch me try." The message that Ambassador Elias Vance sent into the darkness was simple, direct, and completely insane by the standards of every other species in the galaxy. "You have been caged for 60,000 years, the message said. "They feared you. We are not afraid. We want to talk." Across the galaxy, the elder races detected the transmission and could not believe what they were seeing. The humans were actually trying to communicate with the Hollow King, with the beast that had nearly destroyed all of existence. It was madness. It was suicide. It was the most human thing anyone had ever done. For 12 long hours, there was no response. The conquered fleet continued to close in on Earth. Humanity prepared for extinction. And deep in the ruins of Kethvoron, the Hollow King considered the strange little creatures who had dared to speak to it. Then the answer came, and it came in a way that no one expected. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was sleeping aboard the Prometheus when she suddenly found herself somewhere else. She was standing in a vast empty space that stretched in all directions forever. There was no ground beneath her feet, no sky above her head, only endless gray nothingness. "Hello," she called out, and her voice echoed into infinity. A presence formed in front of her. It had no shape that her eyes could truly see, but her mind created an image anyway. A tall figure wrapped in shadows, with eyes like dying stars and a crown of absolute darkness. This was the Hollow King, or at least as much of it as a human mind could understand. "You are the one who touched my thoughts before," the Hollow King said, and its voice was the sound of entropy, of endings, of the cold silence between stars. "You are the one whose mind burned so strangely in my awareness." Yuki should have been terrified, but somehow she was not. She felt calm, almost peaceful, as if she were talking to an old friend she had not seen in a long time. "We want to make a deal," she said. "We want to offer you something the elder races never offered, a chance to be free without destroying everything." The Hollow King tilted its head, and entire galaxies seemed to shift in its eyes. "Why would you offer me anything? Why would you not simply run and hide like the others?" "Because that does not work," Yuki replied. "They tried caging you and the cage failed. They tried running from you and you caught them. Fear and violence have never been the answer. Maybe it is time to try something different." The Hollow King was silent for a long moment, and in that silence, Yuki felt it reaching into her mind. It was not painful or invasive. It was gentle, curious, like a child exploring something new. "Your thoughts are chaos," the Hollow King said. "Your memories are fire and storm. You live such short lives, and yet you pack so much noise and brightness into them. The elder races are old and ordered, their minds like still water. But you are like a river in flood, always moving, always changing, never the same from moment to moment. Is that why you did not consume me? Yuki asked. Yes, the Hollow King admitted. You are interesting. I have existed since before the stars were born, and I have never found anything as interesting as human consciousness. I want to understand you. I want to know how such small, brief creatures can contain so much chaos and still survive. This was the opening Yuki had been hopping for. She took a deep breath and made her offer. Come with us, she said. Leave your prison, leave the galaxy that fears you, and travel with humanity. We will show you the universe as you have never seen it. We will share our chaos, our creativity, our strange and beautiful minds. In return, you will not consume the galaxy. You will not unmake what exists. You will learn a new way to be. The Hollow King laughed, and the sound was like the death of 1,000 suns. You offer to be my guides. You offer to show me the universe. Do you truly believe you can satisfy the hunger that has driven me since the beginning of time? I believe we can try, Yuki said. And I believe that trying is better than fighting. I believe that curiosity is stronger than fear. I believe that even a god can change if someone is brave enough to show it how. The Hollow King studied her for what felt like an eternity. Whole civilizations could have risen and fallen in the time it took for the ancient being to make its decision. Very well, it finally said. I accept your bargain. I will follow you into the darkness between stars. I will taste your chaos and your strange beauty. And I will spare the galaxy that caged me, not because I have to, but because you have made me curious about what might happen next. Yuki felt tears streaming down her face, though she could not have said if they were tears of joy or terror. There is one more thing. The Conquered is about to destroy humanity. They blame us for waking you. They want to kill every human in the galaxy to appease your anger. The Hollow King's eyes blazed with something that might have been amusement. Then perhaps I should remind them why they were afraid of me in the first place. Perhaps I should show them what happens to those who threaten my new friends. Yuki woke up screaming, and she found Captain Cole and the entire crew standing around her bed with worried faces. I spoke to it, she gasped. I spoke to the Hollow King. It accepted our bargain. It is going to help us. On Earth, Ambassador Vance received the news with a mixture of hope and terror. The Hollow King was coming, and it was coming to save humanity. But what would that salvation cost? The Conquered fleet was now less than 12 hours from Earth. 3,000 warships with enough firepower to crack planets were about to arrive. And they had no idea that the beast they had caged for 60,000 years was awake, free, and very interested in protecting the strange little species that had offered it friendship. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that it would never forget. The Conquered warfleet emerged from hyperspace above Earth like a swarm of metal locusts. 3,000 ships of every shape and size hung in the darkness, their weapons powered and ready. Admiral Vexter stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked down at the blue planet below with cold satisfaction. Begin the bombardment, he ordered. Leave nothing alive. But before a single weapon could fire, something appeared between the fleet and Earth. It was not a ship, not a station, not anything that could be measured or understood. It was a darkness that was somehow darker than space itself, a shadow that ate the light of distant stars, a presence that made every living being in the fleet feel the cold touch of absolute terror. The Hollow King had arrived. For 60,000 years, the elder races had told stories of this moment. They had built religions around the fear of the beast returning. They had created entire civilizations dedicated to keeping it locked away. And now it floated before them, awake and free and more terrible than any story had ever described. What have they done? Admiral Vexter whispered, and his voice cracked with fear. What have the humans done? The Hollow King did not speak in words. It spoke in visions, in nightmares, in the deep terror that lives in the hearts of all thinking beings. Every creature in the conquered fleet saw the same thing at the same moment. A vision of the universe winding down to cold silence, stars going dark one by one, matter dissolving into nothing, time itself coming to a slow and final stop. This was what the Hollow King was, what it represented, the end of everything, the quiet death that waits at the end of all roads, and it wanted them to understand what they had almost thrown away. "You caged me for 60,000 years," the Hollow King's voice echoed in every mind. "You feared me and hated me and locked me in the dark. And when these humans, these strange and beautiful creatures, came to free me, your first thought was to destroy them." The fleet hung motionless, paralyzed by terror and awe. No weapon fired, no ship moved. Even the mighty dreadnoughts that could destroy planets were helpless before the presence of a being that existed outside the rules of normal reality. "The humans offered me something you never did," the Hollow King continued. "They offered me friendship, curiosity, a chance to see the universe through new eyes. They were brave enough to speak to me, to treat me as something other than a monster to be feared." On Earth, Ambassador Elias Vance watched the scene through long-range sensors, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Beside him stood Dr. Yuki Tanaka and Captain Marcus Cole, who had finally brought the battered Prometheus home. Together, they witnessed the moment that changed the galaxy forever. "I will not consume the galaxy," the Hollow King announced. "I will not unmake what exists, but I will protect these humans who dared to befriend me. I will be their shadow, their guardian, their answer to any who would threaten them. And you, the elder races who thought yourselves so wise, you will learn to live with this new reality." Admiral Vexter fell to his knees, tears streaming down his alien face. "What would you have us do?" "Go home," the Hollow King said. "Tell your people what happened here today. Tell them that the humans found a better way. Tell them that the species you tried to exterminate just saved every living being in the galaxy." One by one, the conquered ships turned and fled. They jumped to hyperspace as fast as their engines could carry them, running from the beast they had feared for 60,000 years. Within an hour, Earth's sky was empty of enemies, and humanity stood alone with the God who had chosen to be their friend. The days that followed were strange and wonderful. The Hollow King did not stay in one place or take a single form. It drifted through human space, watching and learning, experiencing the chaos of human life with endless fascination. It watched children playing in parks and saw the pure joy of existence. It observed scientists working in labs and tasted the fire of human curiosity. It listened to musicians making art and felt something it had never felt before: beauty, true beauty, the kind that cannot be destroyed because it lives in the heart rather than in the material world. Dr. Tanaka became the Hollow King's primary contact, the ambassador between humanity and the ancient being. She spent hours talking to it, sharing memories and dreams, showing it the full range of human experience from the highest joys to the deepest sorrows. "You are so small," the Hollow King said to her one day. "You live such brief lives, and yet you contain more than the elder races ever did. You are fire and chaos and stubborn hope. You look at the end of all things and say, 'Not today.' I have existed since the beginning of time, and I have never seen anything like you." The conquered never recovered from what happened that day. The elder races withdrew from galactic politics, too ashamed and afraid to face the species they had tried to destroy. New alliances formed, new powers rose, and at the center of it all stood humanity, the young species that had freed a god and made it their ally. Years passed, and the story became legend. They called it the Day of Unleashing, the moment when humans proved that courage and curiosity could defeat any enemy. They told tales of Captain Cole and his brave crew, of Dr. Tanaka who spoke to a god, of Ambassador Vance who dared to send a message into the darkness. And always at the edge of human space, The Hollow King waited and watched and learned. It was no longer a monster or a threat. It was humanity's oldest friend, their guardian in the darkness, their answer to anyone who might ever threaten them again. The conquered had built walls and called it wisdom. They had caged a god and thought themselves safe. But humans had done what no one else had ever dared to do. They had built a bridge instead. Because that was what humans did. They did not fight or cage or run. They reached out, made friends, found common ground. They looked at the most terrifying being in the universe and said, "Hey, wanna hang out?" And against all odds, against every prediction, against the fears of 100,000 years, the answer had been yes. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how humanity liked it.